I was invited by my high school friend Sawada to visit some ruins at an old mining town. I myself have no interest in ruins. On the other hand, Sawada is intoxicated by the nostalgic atmosphere that ruins exudes, and he finds bliss in imagining the lives of the people who once lived there and the daily life of that time while looking at the decayed buildings. This time, there was a reason why Sawada strongly invited me. The ruins in question are among the most prominent mining town ruins in the country and are also famous as a haunted spot. Although Sawada has experience exploring such places alone many times, he was intimidated by the vastness of this mining town ruin and the ghost stories he saw on the internet. However, his passion for ruins outweighed his fear, and he explained that nothing could stop him. I asked what kind of stories he had seen. Sawada mentioned the usual things like hearing footsteps when no one was there, hearing voices, or seeing a man in old mining clothes. I questioned Sawada as to why he wanted me to go along with him. He joked around and mentioned it wasn't due to fear or anxiousness, but rather due to the vastness of the area. However, I could see Sawada's face begin to shift from joking to dead serious as he revealed that a significant number of people who go to this place end up missing. Sawada went on to explain that when researching the area online, he came upon this startling discovery. Saying this, Sawada showed me several online news articles. The articles from local newspapers reported missing persons all occurring near the ruins of the mining town. After seeing several of these articles, I went silent. Sawada wanted me to go with him not due to the vastness of the area, but because of all of these reports of missing people. Seeing my hesitance, Sawada encouraged me to go along, insisting he would cover the cost of the trip and that regardless of what happened, we would deal with it together. Sawada pulled up a local ryokan that cost 20,000 yen per night, as well as an all-you-can-eat drink plan. After seeing that, I figured it could be a fun trip. On the day of the trip, we set off early in the morning on our motorcycles. We both shared a common hobby of biking and often went on tours together. We took our time heading to the destination, stopping at highway service areas and roadside stations along the way. We arrived at the destination around 1 p.m. Since it was a bit early to check in, we decided to scout the mining town ruins first, as suggested by Sawada. Relying on information from the internet, we headed towards the destination only to find the mountain path, which seemed to be the entrance, blocked. A large "no entry" sign was posted, and the path was barricaded. We parked our bikes in front of the barricade and climbed over it to head towards the mining town ruins. The paved road was in disrepair, and the vegetation was overgrown. The path leading to the ruins exuded an atmosphere that seemed to repel people. We proceeded with few words. After walking for 30 minutes, the ruins of the mining town came into view. It retained more of its former appearance than we imagined. The wide area was filled with many ruins, and from the decayed streets one could imagine that this place was once bustling with activity. Even I, who had no interest in ruins, was overwhelmed by its presence and felt a sense of nostalgia. Sawada suggests that we should check in at the ryokan and come back in the evening. Following Sawada's words after the preliminary inspection, we left the mining town ruins. After checking in at the inn and taking a short break, we headed back to the ruins. The mining town ruins were about 30 minutes away by bike, not too far. After smoothly navigating the mountain path, we arrived at the blocked entrance. Revisiting the mining town ruins, Sawada's steps were light, perhaps due to his excitement. Sawada kept moving forward quickly while I struggled to keep up. Indeed, this mining town's ruins was beyond our imagination. The more we advanced, the more we felt immersed in the atmosphere. It was so immersive that I felt as if I were a resident of the mining town. Overwhelmed by the numerous ruins spread out before us, we explored the area. Sawada took photos of the ruins with an expensive-looking camera, while I took photos with my smartphone. This mining town, which flourished in the early Showa period, was once home to many people. The town prospered due to high-quality coal, attracting many workers seeking jobs. However, as times changed, the mining town was abandoned, leaving only remnants of its past and the ruins of dreams. Sawada looked to be in his element, and I was beginning to have fun myself. Suddenly, we both felt a heavy sensation pressing down on us. Our eyes both met, sensing the strange feeling. At the same time, like a scene from a manga, several crows flew away cawing. The previously calm atmosphere changed dramatically, and we couldn't move from the spot. We could only watch as the sun set, and it gradually grew darker. We could do nothing but brace ourselves against this unknown presence. Suddenly, a siren sounded from somewhere. The low, eerie siren echoed through the ruins surrounded by mountains, like an air raid warning, mocking our fear. It continued for what felt like an eternity before finally stopping. We both looked at each other, questioning what we had just experienced. As we were talking about the siren, we suddenly heard the sound of footsteps. We turned towards the direction of the footsteps, however, there was no one there. Although there was no one in sight, we could still hear the sound of footsteps. The number increased one by one until it sounded like an entire army marching. Amidst the sound, we could also hear people murmuring. However, we couldn't make out what was being said. The countless footsteps and murmuring voices were heading towards the depth of the ruins leading to the mine. Unable to bear the fear any longer, Sawada let out a scream. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he started running towards the direction of the footsteps. Suddenly, left behind, I followed after him. Sawada, running in a frenzy, couldn't hear my voice. Almost on the verge of losing my mind, finally caught up to Sawada, pulled him to the ground, and pinned him down. I shook Sawada and screamed at him to pull himself together. Sawada, still struggling, finally came to his senses. I could see some rationale return to his once panicked expression. We both agreed to get out of there. Grabbing Sawada's arm, we desperately retraced our steps. Sawada kept looking back, repeatedly muttering, "We have to go. We have to go. Everyone's waiting." By the time we finally reached the entrance of the mining town, it was already dark. We continued to push through the mountain path, gasping for breath. When we finally saw the barricade, it was pitch dark. We quickly got on our bikes and hurried away from the place. When we arrived at the inn, the maid was preparing to bring food to our room. We finally felt alive again, thanks to the aroma of the warm dishes on the tray the maid was holding. We savoured our meal and enjoyed our drinks, trying to forget the terrifying experience of that day. That night, I had a vivid dream. I was in a bustling town, it was dark, and under the dim sky, many people were walking through alleys lined with restaurants and bars. The town had an old-fashioned feel, reminiscent of the Showa era, evoking a sweet nostalgia. As I walked, I heard someone calling my name. I turned to see Sawada waving at me from inside a bar. The place was crowded with customers, and Sawada was among them. He was wearing a dirty t-shirt and work pants with a soot-stained towel around his neck. The men surrounding Sawada were dressed similarly, and I suddenly understood that they were miners. Sawada downed a mug of beer and shouted with a beaming smile that he was going to stay there. He then proceeded to thank me for everything and told me to go home. I woke up from my strange dream and looked at the futon next to me where Sawada had been sleeping. But he wasn't there. Thinking he might have gone to the bathroom, I headed to the room's toilet, but no one was there. When I turned on the light, I saw Sawada's yukata carelessly thrown on the floor. Then I noticed that Sawada's belongings were gone. Looking at the clock, it was 3 a.m. I returned to the bedside and picked up my charging phone and called Sawada, but there was no answer. No matter how many times I called, Sawada did not pick up. Holding the phone to my ear, I rushed out of the room and headed to the inn's entrance. The entrance of the inn was dimly lit. Praying that Sawada would answer, I stepped outside. Sawada's bike, which should have been parked there, was gone. I hurried back to the unmanned front desk and rang the bell, but no one came out. With no other choice, I returned to the room to get ready. I realised I would have to go look for Sawada myself. With that resolve, I stepped outside the inn and mounted my bike. I inserted the key and turned the starter. The engine, which usually started in the first try, would not start. The sound of the starter echoed in vain. Giving up on the electric starter, I tried to kickstart the engine, but that didn't work either. Despite my desperate plea, the bike's engine would not start. As I sat slumped over the bike, a taxi slowly approached. Who could have called a taxi at this hour? Watching the taxi suspiciously, it stopped right in front of the inn. After staring at it for a while, I got off the bike and approached it. The rear door opened and the driver proceeded to offer me a ride. I hesitated, unsure if I should get into the taxi I hadn't called, but I decided to get in anyway. Trying to keep calm, I told him my destination was the old mining town ruins. The rear door closed and the taxi started to move. The driver navigated the dark mountain road with ease. Both the driver and I remained silent for about 10 minutes. The driver broke the silence first and asked why I was going to the mining town ruins. I told him that I suspected my friend had went there. The driver didn't appear to be surprised and stated it was a place where people shouldn't just visit. He explained that it was once a bustling old town with many people until a horrible incident occurred, leaving the town in its now abandoned state. The driver continued stating, The mining town ruins are all still smouldering, like the ashes of coal. People's thoughts, dreams, and hopes are still there. He said this with a slight laugh, shaking his shoulders. I was entranced by his words, until he asked me one simple question that took me to my very core. You heard it, didn't you? The siren? The driver's expression turned serious as he looked in the rearview mirror. My entire body froze at the driver's words. That wasn't just a siren. It's seeking people, gathering them, looking for those who will settle in that town. The mining town isn't finished yet. That's why I came to pick you up. The words came to pick you up sent a chill down my spine. The driver finished speaking and turned on the car radio. The siren sound from the radio was the same as the one Sawada and I heard at the mining ruins. I was too terrified to say a word. I closed my eyes and attempted to cover my ears. The driver spoke over the siren, but you see, even if it tries to gather people, that place is already finished. So you should go back home alone. But I'm sorry, you have to give up on your friend. He has been captivated, completely taken in. He will never return. Just like me. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the inn's room. Bright sunlight indicated that it was morning. I could hear the chirping of wild birds outside. I fearfully glanced at the futon next to me. Sawada, who should have been sleeping there, was gone. With a deep sigh, I recalled the conversation with the driver and understood that Sawada would not be coming back. Remembering Sawada's words of gratitude from the dream, tears fell from my eyes. Afterwards, I contacted the front desk and explained that Sawada had suddenly disappeared from the room. I then contacted the police and an investigation began. To summarise, Sawada was never found. The officer explained indirectly that there are a few such cases each year, and none of the missing persons have been found. I also reunited with Sawada's parents for the first time since high school graduation. They looked a bit older, but more than that, they seemed utterly exhausted. It was understandable as their son, Sawada, had gone missing. The stress they were under was unimaginable. Even so, they remained strong, actively cooperating with the investigation and expressed their gratitude to me for accompanying their son on his last trip and for being a good friend since high school. 10 years have passed since then. Sawada is still missing. In my smartphone album, there are photos of Sawada taken at the mining town ruins. I believe Sawada is probably still there. If I could see Sawada just one more time, I would remind him that he invited me on that trip and said he'd cover the lodging costs. But I ended up paying for both of us. You owe me 20,000 yen. However, I know I will never see Sawada again. In the photo, Sawada is smiling broadly. I believe that Sawada is surely living happily in that town.